Unsurprisingly, Bronny James has quickly become one of the most polar players in the entire sport. The main cause of that is that his freshman season at USC has been, well, not great. Through 18 games, he's averaging less than 6 points, 3 assists, and 3 rebounds, shooting 37% from the field and 28% from 3. Objectively, those numbers are just bad. There's really no other way to put it. Because of that, when the conversation surrounding Bronny potentially going to the NBA is brought up, things get pretty heated. In that debate, there's really two sides, the biggest of which is those that think Bronny getting an NBA opportunity is completely unjustified and undeserving. That group is then broken up into some subgroups. You have those that for some reason seem to genuinely want to see him fail. Whether that's due to hatred for LeBron or just frustration with all the hype, I'm really not sure. Then the other members of that group focus on the player that Bronny is today and just question whether he has done enough to be close to a legit NBA level prospect, a conversation that's fair to have. But there's also still a very vocal opposition to both of those groups, those that genuinely believe it's not unreasonable for a team to take a chance on Bronny. And right now, I'm pretty undecided on where I stand. You would hate to see being drafted just because of your last name become a trend in the league. But I also don't think it's that crazy to at least make a case for Bronny as a prospect. Yes, those numbers are ugly, but there's also a lot of context that needs to be added to those numbers.
Breaking news into First Take. Bronny James, the eldest son of Los Angeles Lakers star LeBron James, suffered a cardiac arrest Monday and is in stable condition. Quote, yesterday, while practicing, Bronny James suffered a cardiac arrest. Medical staff was able to treat Bronny and take him to the hospital. He is now in stable condition and no longer in ICU.
It would later be reported this was due to a congenital heart defect. This was obviously very serious, very scary, and it's safe to say in the months following caused basketball to plummet down Bronny's list of priorities. At the time, it seemed legitimately possible he would miss his entire freshman season. Some thought there was a real chance it could end his basketball journey completely. Now, thankfully, that wasn't the case. His recovery went really well, and I'm no medical expert, but there seems to be a lot of confidence this was really just a freak event. There isn't any serious long-term concerns, which is amazing to hear, but that level of confidence didn't come overnight. He wasn't cleared to return to the basketball court until November 30th of last year. So just so we're all on the same page on the timeline, he begins training with the team at the end of June. Only a few weeks later, he suffers a cardiac arrest. Then for all of August, all of September, all of October, all of November, he's away from the basketball court, at least in any official capacity with USC. After being cleared to start practicing, he makes his debut only 10 days later, 1 full week of practice. USC at this time was already 8 games into the season. When looking at that timeline, I just can't understand why some have the guts to judge his production like this is a normal situation. Throughout that massive stretch of time where he's away from the court, he's not getting the chance to prepare for his freshman season, establish chemistry with his teammates, and get comfortable in the offense. It also can't be overlooked what he was potentially having to go through mentally during that time. Then to make things even less ideal, it's been a rough season for USC as a whole. They came in with some pretty high expectations. They had Boogie Ellis returning and added in the #1 high school recruit in the country. They began the year ranked 21st in the AP poll. But flash forward to today, they sit with just a 10-16 record, a conference record of just 4-11, and a 1-8 record on the road. Now there are a lot of people that realize this is far from an ideal situation for Bronny. But another side of all of this that seems to be getting overlooked or forgotten entirely is who Bronny was as a player before all this. When ESPN had Bronny inside the top 10 of their first mock draft less than a year ago, or in June when they had him mocked at 17, only weeks before the cardiac arrest, scouts were not talking about his ability as a shot creator or his scoring production. The player that was being mocked as a top 10 selection was a completely different player than the one that went viral as a son of LeBron James in middle school, crossing up every 12-year-old in his way. A lot had changed between then and the end of Bronny's high school career at Sierra Canyon, one of the biggest programs in the country, consistently loaded up with 4- and 5-star recruits top to bottom. Because of that, Bronny wasn't able to come in as a freshman and receive a big role. When he did get the chance to play, he was forced to buy in as a role player playing off the ball. Now, despite what some would assume because of all the attention he had received pretty much his entire life, this was actually a role he bought into, and it started to transform his game. He went from this flashy point guard filling up the highlight reel making moves off the dribble to a high IQ combo guard making most of his impact as a 3-and-D presence, something it took a while for scouts to really buy into. For a majority of high school, Bronny was just going further and further down the rankings. A meniscus tear in 2021 really didn't help. It really wasn't until the summer leading up to his senior year where he finally started to go in the right direction again. He had grown into his frame, causing him to take a massive leap as an athlete and really started to assert himself as one of the top perimeter defenders in the class. He was eventually able to climb all the way back to the 20th recruit in the country. But he did that averaging just 14 points a game, a majority of which was coming in transition and as a spot-up shooter. Now, he had still been showing enough as a playmaker and off the dribble for scouts to assign a fair amount of upside to his game. But it was clear, a majority of his stock, when he was being mocked as high as the 10th pick in the draft, was coming from the defensive end of the floor. That was clear even in those ESPN mocks. Bronny James is now a projected top 10 pick thanks to the significant jump he's made at Sierra Canyon, developing into arguably the best perimeter defender. That's the side of his game that really started to get scouts interested. It wasn't what you see in a Ball is Life mixtape. And while it's rarely mentioned, he's continued to impress on that end of the floor.
Up here, it's fair weather. Yeah. I am a notably fair bandwagon. Right, let's see something. Give me a dunk.
Here we go. James slams it home.
It's an illness where he lost 13 pounds in just a couple of days.
Dylan Andrews swatted by Bronny James.
Should have looked opposite wing on that one.
Oh, blocked by James!
Right now, it is pretty apparent that he's bringing very little as a shot creator. But really, that's not much of a surprise. The real concern offensively is without a doubt the shooting from outside. That was looked at as one of his biggest strengths, and in order to build a case for him as a prospect, you have to believe these struggles are nothing but short term. And honestly, with what we've seen before, is that really that bold of a take?
Omaha Ballou feeds Bronny James, who drills it from deep. Holloway now guard Bronny. Oh, from NBA range! Sweet stroke from Bronny.
As though they have something to prove.
Bronny James!
Threes count more than two.
Bronny James wants another three. Give it to him. Come on. On display here at Toyota Center, including Bronny James. Bullseye for Bronny, number 4.
Over the last few years, we've seen more than a few players drafted based on who they were before college or maybe the G League. Players that didn't just suffer a cardiac arrest. So is taking a chance on Bronny this summer really that unjustified? Again, it's tough to say. I'm starting to lean on the side that in more normal circumstances, Bronny would have positioned himself really well for the draft this season. But that's really not a popular opinion. Brendan Marks of The Athletic said, "Take away the bloodline, and Bronny James is a multi-year college player, one who needs to continue honing his skills." Reminder, on one of the most disappointing teams in the worst of all 6 power conferences. There are similar sentiments to this everywhere. But putting aside all the different opinions, what's the actual interest from NBA teams right now?
But I would love to do the whole Ken Griffey Sr. and Jr. thing. That would be ideal for sure. Being with him, spending a full year with him in the same uniform, that would be the icing on the cake.
We've seen LeBron express this goal of playing with his son over and over again. However, time is ticking on that goal. He's 39 years old and already started hinting at retirement following last season. But assuming he does continue to play, it's far from a guarantee that's with the Los Angeles Lakers. He has a player option this summer, which it seems he's trying his best to make the Lakers well aware of. But what really makes this interesting in regards to Bronny is that player option or any other contract decision doesn't need to happen until after the NBA draft, something that bodes really well for Bronny's NBA chances. That is, if he even wants to leave USC after this season, which is still up in the air.
Is there another one and done in your household, or are we going to see him a couple of years at USC?
It's up to him. It's up to the kid. Obviously, we're going to go through the whole process. He's still in season now, has a Pac-12 tournament coming up. And then we're
Heartbreaker last night.
Yeah, heartbreaker last night in overtime. Heartbreaker last night in overtime. We're going to weigh all options, and we're going to let the kid make the decision if he wants to.
I know it's not financial, so let's...
It's definitely not financial.
Let's go.
Now, if he does decide to leave and head to the draft, there's actually Vegas odds on his destination. Right now, you've got the Lakers as the favorites. The Athletic reported that the Lakers, per a high-ranking team source, are willing to explore the notion of adding Bronny James next season. This stance, the source said, is rooted in the reality that James's happiness truly matters to the organization. They potentially have their 2024 first, depending on if the Pelicans, as a part of the Anthony Davis trade, choose to receive that pick or defer to 2025. And they have 2 second-round picks that could help. It really shouldn't be surprising at all that they're the favorites, but they're far from the only team in the mix. We saw Shams report that none of the 30 teams have explicitly expressed interest in Bronny, but the Raptors are reportedly scouting him. LeBronto coming full circle would definitely be interesting, but the odds actually favor a few other teams over them. Just behind the Lakers is the Heat and Cavaliers, two teams that make a lot of sense given the personal connection in combination with them both being competitive situations. That's going to be very important here. LeBron is going to have a lot of leverage in this situation whether we like it or not. A team like the Charlotte Hornets is not going to be able to bring in LeBron James just by getting Bronny. It feels like it's going to be a little bit more like a trade request. But then next in the odds, you see two really intriguing on-court situations with the Knicks and Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, it's hard to envision a world where the bidding war gets to the point where Bronny ends up as a first-round selection. That would just be ridiculous. But we could see one of these teams get pretty aggressive, and honestly, I don't see why you wouldn't. I also just don't understand how there's people rooting against him right now. We saw him come back from a torn meniscus and climb back up the recruiting rankings. That shut up a lot of doubters in the process. But now those doubters have gotten even louder despite him being less than a year removed from a full-on cardiac arrest. If he can manage to come back from that, man, is it going to be fun to watch all the people scrambling to go delete their tweets.